A lovely good morning to you all once again. Sincere apologies for starting the meeting late. This was due to an unforeseen circumstance. Be that as it may, we thank you for your patience. My name is Loisa Mbata, and I'll be the Director of Programs this morning. I would like to welcome our shareholders who are present in the auditorium here at Mulungushi International Conference Center, and also those that are joining us virtually. A lovely good morning to you all, and you're welcome. Allow me at this point to introduce the board of directors that are present in this extraordinary general meeting for members of Zccm Ih shareholders. We have in front the chairperson of the Zccm Ih board, Mr. Kakenen Wamuyangwa. To his right is Mr. Mubita Akapelwa, the vice chairperson. Next to Mr. Akapelwa is Mr. Tusak Philip. To the left of the chairperson is the company secretary, Mr. Charles Mjumpi. And to his left is the chief executive officer, Dr. Ndoba Vibeti. We also have one of the directors, Mrs. Masitala Mushinga. And to the far left is Mr. Moses Nyerenda. These are the Zccm Ih board of directors present. On my immediate right is Zccm Ih management present. The chief legal officer, Mr. Lombembalashi, and Mr. Brian Msonda, who is the chief investment officer. Next to Mr. Msonda is Mrs. Josephine Chilandu Sakala, the chief financial officer, and the chief internal auditor, Mr. Shepard Mwanza, and Mr. Tisa Chama, who is the chief technical officer. These are the members of Zccm Ih management that are present in this meeting. The purpose of this meeting, as you may all aware, is with regards to the Mopani Copper Mines transaction. And for the furtherance of this meeting, I will hand over to the company secretary. Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning, members, and good morning, everyone in attendance. Mr. Kakeno Muyangwa to preside as chairperson for this meeting, and this is in compliance with Article 52 of the Articles of Association of the company, which provides for the chairperson of the board to preside as chairperson at a general meeting of members. I now invite the board chair.
Good morning, everybody. Bonjour à tous. I call upon the company secretary to confirm that the quorum has been constituted.
Chairperson, I confirm that the quorum has been constituted.
The necessary quorum being present, I declare the meeting duly constituted and open, and welcome you all to the extraordinary general meeting of the company. I have the following announcements to make. On behalf of the board of directors, I'm happy to welcome you to the extraordinary general meeting of the members of the company. The purpose of this meeting is to seek shareholders' approval and finalization of the search for a strategic equity partner for Mopani Copper Mines PLC. Queries relating to individual shareholder concerns will be handled after the meeting within this room. Registration of members present is being done at the entrance. We have also made provisions for online registration. I hope all members register their names. Allow me now to take this opportunity to introduce to you Mrs. Leah Mutonga Ngoma, representing the Industrial Development Corporation Limited, the 61.3% majority shareholder in Zccm Ih, She has joined us virtually. Mrs. Ngoma. In addition, I would like to introduce Mr. Rodney Machila, representing the government of the Republic of Zambia, holder of significant shares totaling 17.3% through the Minister of Finance as custodian. I also acknowledge the presence of Mr. Patrick Chawe, representing the National Pension Scheme Authority with a shareholding of 15%. He has joined us online. In terms of apologies from shareholders, I have not received any apologies. Do we have any apologies from members unable to attend the meeting? Thank you. There are no apologies. We also have present in the meeting our sponsoring brokers, Stockbrokers Zambia, led by Mr. Jack Kanyanga, our transfer secretaries, Copsev Transfer Agents Limited, led by Mr. Setfri Nyapi, transaction advisors, led by Mr. Giles Douglas, legal advisors, Chibesa Konde and Company, led by Ms. Chishimba Kachasa. We also have representations from the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as the Lusaka Securities Exchange. I now hand over to the Secretary to inform the meeting of the proxies received and to read the notice convening the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm in receipt of a number of proxies. Should you be in possession of a proxy appointment, please pass it on to me through the ushers present. I just wish to read just a few proxies that I have received, as indicated by the board chairperson, the IDC being represented by Mrs. Leam Tonga Ngoma, the Minister of Finance being represented by Mr. Rodney Machila, the National Pension Scheme Authority being represented by Mr. Patrick Chabwe, KCM Trust Scheme being represented by Ms. Nasilele Ngumbi, and then we have others that are being represented by Mr. Philippe Toussac, Mr. Barry Michel, Mr. Charles Thierry, and then we also have Satunya Regina Pension Fund being represented by Nasilele Ngumbi, just to read a few. The notice convening the meeting has been in your hands within the stipulated period as prescribed in the Articles of Association of the company, and in part it reads, notice is hereby given that the extraordinary general meeting of the shareholders of Zccm Ih Egm will be held on Friday, the 23rd of February 2024 at 10 hours at Mulongoshi International Conference Center, Kenneth Kaunda Wing, Banquet Hall number 2 in Lusaka, Zambia, and virtually via the video conferencing link that was provided. I now hand back to the chairperson.
The voting on resolutions will be done via an electronic system. Our transfer agent, Copsev Zambia, will provide detailed guidance on the procedure for electronic voting before each resolution is passed. Questions will be allowed before tabling the resolution. We now come to agenda item number 1, which is so the first item on the agenda is the approval of the shareholders of Zccm Ih Egm of the transaction relating to a 1.1 billion investment by International Resources Holdings, RSC Limited, or IRH, through its wholly owned subsidiary, Delta Mining Limited, for a 51% interest in Mopani Copper Mines PLC. I invite the Chief Investments Officer, Mr. Brian Musonda, to make a presentation highlighting the major items of significance regarding the Mopani Copper Mines PLC transaction. Mr. Musonda.
Good morning, Chair, and the directors, as well as the members present in this meeting. So on behalf of the board, I'll be making a presentation to highlight the key features of the transactions which the members are being invited to consider and possibly support. In terms of the outline of the presentation, we'll take you through the key highlights of the transaction, then provide an overview of the strategic equity partner, then we'll also highlight in terms of the effect of the transaction on the balance sheet of Zccm, and then we'll also highlight in terms of what will be the next key steps to be undertaken before finalization of the transaction. In terms of the key highlights of the transaction, in terms of the overview, in this transaction, we have Delta Mining Limited, which is a subsidiary of International Resources Holdings Limited, which is based in Abu Dhabi. The company has agreed to acquire a 51% shareholding in Mopani Copper Mine for a total investment of up to $1.1 billion. As we progress with the presentation, we'll be able to give further breakdowns in terms of how this has been further split. In terms of how the funds will be used, the committed amounts of $1.1 billion will be comprised of $620 million will go towards equity. This will be used to support the estimated working capital requirement of Mopani to make it sustainable, as well as ensuring that the expansion projects are fully funded and finished in order to be able to increase the production of Mopani Copper Mine from the current levels. $400 million will be paid to Grenco to settle the $1.8 billion debt. Members, you may recall that there's a legacy $1.5 billion plus accrued interest. It has grown to just below $1.7 billion. Again, there's additional $100 million that Grenco invested to support the working capital by issuance of various letters of credit. This has now totaled to $1.8 billion, and as partial consideration, $400 million will go towards settlement of that. As a result, this is going to have a debt position on Mopani which will reduce by $1.5 billion. Further, there is commitment from the investor that up to $88 million will be made available to Mopani Copper Mine as a shareholder loan if required to fund any future working capital that will be required. Members, just to make mention that as part of the discussions and negotiations, the government is one special share is now going to be reinstated, which expired, and this is going to entitle the government of the Republic of Zambia to nominate a director who is supposed to sit on the board to be able to follow the discussions and the progress, as well as being able to get information and pass on to the relevant authorities, and also having certain rights that goes with this right. Other features of the transaction is that the existing offtake agreement with Grenco will be terminated, and this is going to be replaced with a new offtake agreement with Delta, which will be based on the commercial terms, and the 20% will still be retained, which can be acquired by local entities within Zambia. in terms of the amounts that will be received by Grenco. So in cash, there's going to be $400 million out of the $1.8 billion. And also there's going to be a deferred payment of 10% price of differential royalty from Mopan up to 2027, for the period from 2027 to 2036, in instances where a copper price is above $12,000 per ton. In addition, there is $150 million that is going to be restructured, and this is supposed to be paid by Zccm in a period not more than $150 million as part of the commercial negotiations and discussions. Members, as you might be aware, Zccm used to be at 10%. With the restructured balance sheet and value to come in, Zccm will end up at 49%. Also to remind the members that at the annual general meeting of the 1st March 2021, there was a guarantee that was presented to the members which was voted upon by the members, which was issued by Zccm, meaning that the entire $1.7 billion was supposed to be settled by Zccm in an event of default. As a result of the structuring, this guarantee is now being released. In terms of the rationale for the transaction, Mopan Copper Mine is going to receive cash injection of $620 million, as highlighted earlier, to ensure that there is sufficient working capital, to ensure that the suppliers are fully settled, to ignite the economic activities on the copper belt as well as in the country. Members, as you're also aware, there are a number of expansion projects that were initiated. I think even in the media, I've always been talking about the estimated cost of $350 million. So from this transaction, $400 million will be allocated towards finalization of these expansion projects. Further, the balance sheet is being restructured and it is going to eliminate the existing Grenco debt burden. As you might be aware, in September, the financial statements for the year 2021 as well as 2022 were presented, and you noted the effect of this transaction at Zccm's group level, seeing that more than 80% of the assets were coming from Mopan, and it also threatened the solvency of the company. As you might have noted, Zccm in its books was recognizing a value of 0. We've done post-balance sheet transaction valuation. Now 49%, there's already a value going to be attributable to Zccm of about $186 million. With that, it's also going to make the balance sheet of Mopan more sustainable, and even if in instances it wants to acquire additional funding, the balance sheet will be able to uptake this as a result of the restructuring. In addition, new skills as well as expertise from Delta that is being introduced will facilitate the expansion of the Mopan copper production to above 200,000 tons per annum. This will be more than double compared to the current level of production, which is slightly below $100,000. And we believe this is in line also with government's pronouncements to ensure that you expand the copper production to the desired level of 3 million tons per annum. As a result of this transaction, it will provide to Zccm with a long-term partner and commitment to maintain the existing labor force on Mopan copper mine. Further, this will ensure a long-term sustainability of the company, which will contribute to revitalization of the copper belt as well as the general economy for the benefit of every Zambian. In terms of the identity, as well as the overview of the partner that we've been having discussions with, who are being presented for your consideration and approval. Members, as mentioned, Delta is the company that will be investing in Mopan, which is 100% owned by International Resources Holdings Limited. And International Resources Holdings Limited falls under the group of International Holdings Company Limited, which is listed on the Abu Dhabi Stock Exchange, and using the prevailing rate, the market capitalization of the holding company is estimated to be $238 billion. Zccm was consistent in terms of the criteria that were being used. I think one of the key criteria was the financial capacity of the partner to be introduced. As you might be aware, there's always extensive capital requirement in the mining sector. International Holdings Limited is going to focus on the mining operations and the solutions. This also helps in terms of diversification, because IHC focuses on any other businesses other than oil as well as arms. It also focuses on mineral explorations with licenses in different places in the world. The company is also focusing on purchasing and sale of different commodities, as well as refining by way of processing and refining of raw materials. Also further, there's focus in private early stage company investments, as well as end-to-end logistic solutions. As a continuation of the company that we are partnering with as Zccm, who we believe there's going to be long-term benefits for the community where the assets are and the country at large. The International Holdings Limited has more than 400 subsidiaries and operates in more than 20 countries, and also they've demonstrated capacity to be able to enhance assets where they've made investments, and we believe that with their experience they'll significantly contribute towards turning around the operations of Mopan. The company is controlled by the Royal Group, which owns 60% of International Holdings Limited, with Sheikh as a member of the Abu Dhabi Royalty, as the chairman of the board of IHC. We've highlighted some of the companies that are under the portfolio of IHC, and the company strategy is well aligned to the Abu Dhabi's Economic Vision 2030, as well as the United Arab Emirates' next 50 development plans. To give further highlights of the details of International Resources Holdings Limited, so it focuses on unlocking the mineral value chains across Africa and beyond, with specialization in energy transition minerals such as copper, cobalt, nickel, lithium. And in terms of the core values of the company, it's integrity, safety, innovation, engagements with the community. I think we recently also saw in the newspaper that the tournament that used to be there for golf for some years doesn't happen. It is going to happen within the year 2024. Again, one of the key criteria that was used was an aspect to do with corporate social investments in the community where the mine operates. Members, in terms of the overview of the structure, which we've decided to present in a pictorial form, as you might be aware, on the far left is the existing structure. The company is 100% owned by Zccm, with 100% offtake to Grenco, and Mopan has the right to retain 20% of the materials for the local value addition. Zccm also provided $100 million by way of shareholder loans and has accrued interest of $7 million, resulting in total principal plus accrued interest of $107 million. Also, the company procured various third-party facilities within the country from various financial institutions, tallying up to $48 million. As mentioned, the Ligas Grenco $1.5 billion has grown plus accrued interest to $1.69 billion, which we rounded off to 1.7, plus the $100 billion. There's another slide that we're going to show you, which shows the burden on the company of over $1.9 billion. After the transaction, Zccm is going to retain 49%, which is significant and in line with the strategic plan of having significant influence in companies where we're going to have interest. Delta is going to have 51%, and as mentioned, another key feature of the transaction is that one special share on behalf of the government of the Republic of Zambia has been negotiated and reintroduced. You will note that there's a star there on the 1.6 as well as $100 million. It will drop off. There will also be a royalty which will be paid only in instances when the copper price is above $12,000. So the excess above $12,000, you pay 10%. In terms of what will be the new debt that will be sitting on the company, it's $400 million from Delta, plus potential $88 million that is going to be restructured from Zccm, as well as $88 million that will be coming from Delta to match what will be the balance to Zccm after a payment has been made. And then the third-party loans of 48 are going to be retained, which will be considered as the funds flows into the company. In terms of settlement of the total $1.8 billion, Grenco is going to write down over $1.2 billion in debt. This is going to be a significant relief to the company, with some of the effects being that just in interest, Mopan was accruing not less than $100 million per month, per year, because before we could even talk about the balance sheet effect. So it was also a tall order in terms of the financial performance of Mopan Copper Mine in the respective financial year ended. As a result, Grenco will be paid $400 million in cash settlement from IHC, which is the ultimate owner of IRH, as well as the Delta. There's also going to be a deferred payment of $150 million, which will be paid by Zccm in a period of 5 years. As mentioned, Zccm has gained significantly from the initial 10%, which will now result in 49% without having invested anything by way of equity, as well as the release of the Grenco's $1.7 billion corporate guarantee that was issued by the Zccm and approved by the shareholders. In addition, a 10% price differential royalty from Mopan, and this only happens in instances where the copper price exceeds 12,000, and then the excess you charge 10%, which will run for a period from 2027 to 2036. Just to provide further clarity, again, in terms of how this $220 million is going to be applied, $130 million will be provided by way of interim financing. Members, as you might be aware, it is in the general public and in the press that before the shareholder could even take possession of the mine, they provided $80 million as interim financing at no cost to the company, which is going to be converted in equity at closure of the transaction. We are expecting another 50 million to come in. This will be a total of $130 million. Further, Zccm, from its investment of $100 million in the company, is going to receive $19 million, which can be used towards the other projects within its portfolio. The remaining 71 million will be used as working capital immediately on closure. The balance of $400 million will be used towards funding the expansion projects so that we can increase the production. So this involves focusing in the processing plants, sinking and finalization of the shaft in Mindola, as well as focusing on ventilation, as well as bulk cooling system, so that we can produce a conducive environment to ensure that the miners underground will be more efficient. On closing, Delta will provide MCM with a loan of 400 million, which will be used to settle Grenco's transaction, resulting in the debt burden being reduced by $1.4 billion, and Zccm's guarantee of $1.69 billion being released, and further loans have been committed of up to $88 million from the partners. This slide just speaks to the funding. I think the 1/3, that is the 80 million, which was already released into the company, and there's another 50 million which is on the way. And then at closing, $90 million is going to flow, and this will add up to $220 million. Then the $400 million will come later to support the projects, with commitment to injecting further $88 million, and also $400 to settle the outstanding. So this totaling $1.1 billion investment into Mopani. There again, we're just trying to demonstrate in terms of currently, there's $1.68 billion owed to Grenco by Mopani. Also $100 million owed to Grenco, with $48 million also being owed to various financial institutions in Zambia, with Zccm also having provided $100 million plus accrued interest, 107. So Mopani is currently carrying a debt burden of $1.941 billion. What is going to happen is that a repayment will go towards settlement of Grenco's debt of 400, 150 will be deferred and to be settled by Zccm, with over $1.2 billion being reduced. Zccm will receive $19 million, and the balance sheet will significantly move from total indebtedness of $1.941 billion to $536 billion. Sorry, $536 million from $1.94 billion in terms of the debt burden on the balance sheet. There are a number of benefits that are anticipated as a result of this transaction due to the commitment that is being done by Delta, a subsidiary of International Resources Holdings. As mentioned earlier, there's going to be recapitalization of the balance sheet, as well as expansion of production. I think looking at where the copper price has been, this is going to bring a lot of benefits to the country, as well as also significantly support our local currency as a result of production. Also, there's going to be expectation in terms of significant increase in shareholder value with a potential future dividends. As mentioned, because of the debt burden on Mopani copper mine, Zccm recognized new value, which was technically negative. Post-balance evaluation shows that Zccm has already recognized just below $200 million. With increased production, this is going to continue adding value, and as per our strategic plan, the focus between now and 2026 is to stabilize the entire portfolio. Zccm is going to hold 49% stake in the company, with dividend payments that are going to be staggered and step up as we progress. With the first 10 years, Zccm will get 30% of the dividends. We expect that probably the first dividend should be starting in more than 6 to 7 years until you ramp up production. Then the next 5 years, this will step up to 35%. Additional 5 years, it will step up to 40%, 45%. Then from 2043, the TCM will be getting 49% in terms of dividends. The other benefit to this transaction is long-term sustainability, with new capital that is being introduced to increase production to north of 200,000 tons per annum. Also secure the economic sustainability of the company, as well as the secure direct as well as indirect jobs, which are currently at more than 10,000 jobs. Also ongoing commitment to invest in social investments in the community, as well as IRH having made commitments to maintain labor force on Mopan copper mine. Also in terms of the effect on the company, it is expected that Mopan will contribute to improvement in terms of the copper belt as well as the Zambian economy. This is also going to result in significant contribution to the treasury by way of various taxes that are supposed to be paid, such as pay-as-you-earn, value-added tax, as well as mineral royalty taxes, that government can also focus on doing other investments to support the citizens. There is also commitment from the incoming investor to promote local suppliers as well as develop capacity for the local suppliers, as well as increase tax receipts and the promotion of supply development. In IRH, we see a long-term partner who we are going to work with, and we are comfortable that it is going to be long-term relationships to promote development in the country. As required members, I think this is quite important in terms of the effect this is going to have on the financial statements of Zccm. So we are demonstrating the before as well as a pro forma adjustment, which is the adjustment what will happen, and also what is going to follow afterwards. As you've seen in the last column, we have arrows which are demonstrating that there's going to be significant benefits. So the first item relates to earnings per share in Zambian kwacha, which was a loss of 23.54 kwacha. With the restructuring, we anticipate that Zccm is going to be posting profits as a result of savings on the interest expenses on the Ligas Grenco debt, and this will result in an improvement of 92.32 kwacha, and the post position will be 68.83. So this shows a significant improvement of 392.4%. In addition, there is also the headline earnings per share. So the difference between earnings per share and headline earnings per share is that we've adjusted for non-conventional effects. In this case, because there used to be full consolidation of Mopan, it being a subsidiary of Zccm. What will happen now in line with the IFRS requirement, it is going to be accounted for through equity, and as a result of the change, there's a profit that is going to be recognized as a result of change in accounting treatment. So that has been adjusted for, but it still shows a very positive position from loss of 23.54 to an earning of 31.72, which was an increase of 234.8%. In terms of the net asset value per share, there's going to be an increase of 191.6%. Members, in terms of the next key steps to finalization and closure of the transactions, on 23rd of February today, this is being presented to you, the members, for consideration and approval so that we can progress with this transaction. One of the CPs that is required is the approval by the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Development for the overall transaction. Application has already been made. We expect this approval to come not later than 29th of February 2024. Also, another condition precedent is the renewal of the license for Mopan Copper Mine, which will be expiring in 2025. So the application has also been made, and we are hoping this is going to be given by 29th. It is also anticipated that by 29th of February, the Security Exchange Commission will give approval for the change of control. In principle, the Securities Exchange Commission is supportive and have given a go-ahead. There are just a few housekeeping activities that are happening in the background. By 1st March of 2024, it is expected that there's going to be finalization of the Grenco documents, intra-group shareholder loans, and the shareholder agreement. The expectations, members, is that between 4th and 8th March, the transaction is going to be finalized, as well as the outstanding funds to flow into the company. According to the documentations, we have a long-term date of 15th March 2024, and from the projection, it means we are going to be 1 week ahead of what is provided for as a long-stop date. Another item that will require to be considered by Q3 2024 is for us to obtain a non-suspensory COMESA approval. It's not a regulatory requirement and doesn't form part of the conditions to close the transaction. So the transaction is going to close, and this is expected to take between 3 to 4 months. Thank you very much, members, for paying attention. Thank you very much, directors.
Dear members, shareholders, that presentation pretty summarized the key facts and the essence of this transaction. I now invite questions from shareholders, and the same will be answered by our CEO, Dr. Vibeti, and Mr. Msonda, the Chief Investment Officer, and Mrs. Sakala, our CFO. As this is a members' meeting, I emphasize that only shareholders are allowed to comment or ask questions. As you comment or ask questions, kindly introduce yourself and which town or country you are coming from. And the questions should be precise, with shareholders being reminded that due consideration should be given to avoid delaying the proceedings of this meeting. Can we now start the question and answer session?
Thank you very much, Chair. At this point in time, we did request that questions are sent in advance, some of them. We received one question from one of the shareholders, and we will be able to read also through some of the questions that have come through. And thereafter, we will also ask those that are present in person here at in the auditorium for questions, And all those that are joining us online, the shareholders, and as guided, please tell us your name and where you are calling us from, especially those that are joining us virtually. I will present the question that we had received earlier on. And this question was from Mr. Sylvain Bloma, who is a shareholder on the Euronext Access Stock Exchange in Paris. And the question is, my question concerns the terms of the transaction under the Glencore payment covenant. Such payment and any associated interest will be paid on a monthly basis over a 5-year period by an intermediary bank to Glencore, and the GRZ will make equivalent payments to the intermediary bank. End of quote from the circular. And he asked the question, will or will not Zccm Ih have to repay the GRZ the $150 million US? If Zccm Ih must repay, what are the terms of repayment? The CEO.
Thank you very much, Corporate Affairs Manager, and good morning to the members. As explained ably by the Chief Investment Officer, in the settlement of the 1.8 billion Glencore debt, an amount of 400 million is going to be paid directly to Glencore by Delta. An amount of 150 million will be paid to Glencore by Zccm. And this is the subject of the question. The government and Zccm will make the necessary arrangements so that if the government pays Glencore on the closing, Zccm will then pay the government. So this is simply a financing arrangement between the two parties in the settlement of the 1.8 billion debt to Glencore. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next question is from shareholders that are joining us virtually, and it reads from Mr. Jan Straat. And the question to Zccm Ih directors representing the GRZ. And the question is, the minority shareholders have asked the Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate the bad terms of the buyout of Mopani in 2021. SEC's press release on 22 October 2022 stated, the investigations border on the circumstances under which these funds were paid by the said mining firm to political party, soon after which the firm exited Zambia under unfavorable terms to the government of the Republic of Zambia. Investigations into this matter are ongoing. The question is, does the agreement between Glencore, IRH, Zccm Ih, and the GRZ provide for the investigations to be dropped and for any further proceedings to be taken?
So the agreement of 2021 between Glencore and Zccm and the government entailed Zccm purchasing a 90% stake in Mopani for $1 and the assumption of the debt, which was $1.5 billion. Any allegations made to the investigative agencies are in the ambit of the investigation agencies, and it is their duty to follow up such allegations and get back to the people who have made them. Thank you very much.
If I can just add, so the answer really is that there are no such provisions in the transaction document. The investigative agencies will continue doing their work, and those investigations are not covered in the transaction document.
Thank you very much. The next question is again from Jan Straat, and the question is, Mopani's potential dividend is reduced and then gradually increased to reach the level of Zccm Ih's share in Mopani. On what copper price basis is this based? if the copper price rises to $12,000 compared with $8,500 today, will this reduce the period of reduced dividend?
Thank you very much again. The dividend arrangement is based at all copper prices. So at the presumption of the payment of dividends, that will be the structure of the dividend split. And the reference to the $12,000 refers to a different arrangement, namely between Glencore and MCM. So when the copper price reaches $12,000 in the period between 2027 and 2026, then only will Mopani pay Glencore a dividend based on a price differential of 10% between $12,000 and the prevailing copper price at the time. Thank you very much.
The question, Theo, relates to the reduced dividend payments to Zccm Ih and in relation to the copper prices. The reduction in dividends to Zccm Ih, which will increase gradually as the shares in Mopani.
Thank you again. That's correct. At whatever price the copper metal will be and dividends are declared, that is how dividends, if they are declared, will be split between the shareholders at Mopani Copper Mines. So at whatever the price. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Nasilele Chai Katisha. Please, as you send the questions, tell us which listing you are from. The question is, one of the terms of the transaction is that the balance of $400 million of the share premium shall be deferred and paid in installments when certain milestones are made. Please give an overview of these milestones. Furthermore, what happens in the event that these milestones are not met?
Thank you very much. CIO, would you like to comment on the detail of that? Because I think you covered it adequately.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, member, for that important question. So, as you might appreciate, we're talking about an amount of $400 million, and as we've always been consistent, the $400 million will not be required on day one because we have a number of expansion projects that will take between 3 to 5 years. So in terms of the milestones that are being referred to, it is what is called a project development plan. So the project development plans itemizes each of the specific projects that were started in order to expand production. So on an annual basis, there's an amount that has been allocated. So to give an example, I think in the first year, what we are looking at, it's just about $110 million towards a number of projects. In the next year also, based on the project development plan, as well as the mine plan, the requisite amount is also going to be dispersed. In terms of what happens in an event that the milestones are not reached, just to make mention that the project development plan forms the basis of the mine plan, which has also been submitted to the Ministry of Mines for incorporation as also the basis of the renewal of the license. So there are enough regulatory provisions which can be used as a basis of attendant decisions being made such that there is a better commitment in terms of what has been committed. So in short, the chances of the milestones not being reached are very minimal, as the Minister of Mines has enough powers to take action if this is not adhered to. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question from Nasilele Chai Katisha. If we can just take note, there are 3 questions. So the first one, what are the repayment terms in relation to the $400 million? What are the repayment terms of the $400 million shareholder loan that will be extended to Mopani by Delta? The next question is, IRH will advance $4 million to Mopani as shareholder loan with SOFR plus 5% margin, while Zccm will advance $19 million to Mopani as shareholder loan with SOFR plus 1%. This 4% difference is interest seems to be very high. What's the rationale for it? CIO?
Thank you very much, Director of Programs, and again, member, thank you very much for the question that you've asked. We've noted that actually part 2 of the question answers the first part of the question, because I think the question is around the terms of the $400 million. So the cost to Mopan is going to be SOFR plus 5%. There's a very important observation that has been made there, in that there's a delta between the interest that will be paid to Zccm on the $100 million, as well as compared to the SOFR plus 5%, so there's a difference of 4%. So this is a transaction that Zccm has worked on for quite some time, and there are a number of considerations that were part of the negotiations. So first and foremost, as you've noted, Zccm is going to recover $19 million out of the $100 million that is being brought in. And also importantly to note, members, is that a decision has to be made as to facilitate entry of $1.1 billion or remain with $100 million, which was not going to have any chance of it being recovered. So I think the issue is, in any transaction that we are going to see, is that any exposure that is there that are coming from the legal transactions puts you in a tricky situation, because it meant that if this transaction was not concluded, Zccm was never going to recover anything out of the $100 million. So it was part of the commercial transaction. So Zccm already has recovered $19 million, where the other investor is not putting in. So I think that is one of the differences. Secondly, the negotiation was that either you remain with the $100 million, which will never be recovered, and the investor doesn't bring in money. In this case, it was a compromise that was reached that 1.1 fresh contribution will come in, also to ensure that there's high chance of Zccm being able to recover the $100 million that was there, which has now reduced to $88 million.
Thank you. The next question again is from Jan Strat. The question is, what is the agreement between Zccm and GRZ to reimburse the $150 million? What is the time frame? CEO?
Thank you very much. As I said earlier, these are negotiations that are still taking place between GRZ and Zccm, and they have not yet been concluded. Thank you.
At this point, I will give an opportunity to those who are present here in the auditorium for questions regarding the presentation. Again, you're guided that you are supposed to be a shareholder, but also tell us which listing you are on. So any questions from the audience? We have a hand behind. Please tell us your full names.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jane Kaesa. I'm based in Lusaka, and I'm representing myself. My question is on the Glencore royalty agreement, which is the 10% differential royalty, which will only be paid where the price exceeds 12,000 per metric ton for a period of from the period 2027 to 2036. I'm just curious. I want to know, suppose during this period we don't exceed 12,000 per metric ton. What does it mean? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get another question? There's a hand behind there.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mkelabai. I represent myself. I think I have an interest in Mopani because that's the last company I worked for, underground at Mufurira. So from this agreement we are talking about, we are looking at certain serious benefits. First to the workers and to the people of Mufurira and the Copper Belt, and then the rest of the country. But then I think for those benefits to accrue, it looks like we are making certain assumptions. There are certain things which must happen. There is this 12,000 expected as a cost per ton. And then there is another assumption that the production rate will increase from the current levels to more than double within a specific period. I'm just wondering what gives maybe Zccm Ih that confidence that these two milestones can be easily achieved? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get another question? There's a hand, two hands in front, then we'll get the responses.
I'm Louis Mosho Jr., representing Cerebrus Technologies Limited. Just out of curiosity, for the royalty agreement with Glencore, I was just curious to know if there's any strategic reason that I think it's a 9-year period, starts in 2027 when we're only in the beginning of 2024. Thank you.
All right, good morning. My name is Vikwato Kamanga, representing myself, Lusaka Stock Exchange. So my question is on the operations both in Mufulira and Kitwe. My understanding is the mines are currently in care and maintenance. So when are the operations expected to start? Is it after, I think I remember seeing in the closing slides, is it after all those processes are done that the operations will start? Or can they start even as some of those processes such as the renewal of the licenses are being done?
Thank you very much. We will get the answers for now for those 4 questions. The first one, what happens beyond the period of the 9-year period if the copper price doesn't go beyond $12,000 per ton?
Thank you very much, Corporate Affairs Manager. So this agreement about the royalty, if between 2027 all the way up to 2026 to 2036, the copper price does not reach $12,000 a ton, then no royalty will be paid. However, if it does, let us say, for example, that it averages $13,000 a ton, then a 10% price differential royalty will be paid. In other words, the difference between $13,000 and $12,000 is $1,000, and 10% of that, on that $1,000, is $100. So a royalty of $100 per ton will be paid to Glencore for all the tons that are produced. So that is how this royalty agreement has been structured between Glencore and MCM. To go on to the second question about the assumptions. So the assumption is a forecast at the insistence of the people or the party that seeks to benefit. In this case, it is Glencore. So if the price again is not attained Okay, this is a market price which Zccm does not have an influence over. Glencore certainly does not have an influence over. It's a market price. If it is not attained, a royalty will not be paid. If it is attained, a royalty will be paid. So it is a take. Somebody has made an assumption. Why have they made that assumption? Well, they have studied the market and they have a view. So we all have certain views. It is the view of the party that it is possible that by that time the price may be at that level. However, if we get to that point and that is not the price, if the price is below, then there is no obligation on Mopani to pay the royalty. As for the issue of the production rate assumption, this has been based on the production development plan. As has been pointed out by the CIO, when the money flows in, the 400 million into Mopani directly, there are milestones to be achieved. So the assumption is, as the milestones are achieved, the production will go up. That is the whole idea about bringing in the investor, a person who's been able to bring in the much needed capital to raise production, to return the asset to profitability. On the fourth question about the operations at Mopani Copper Mine, the operations are not on care and maintenance. Mopani has been producing, although at a reduced level. Mopani's long-term steady state is over 200,000 tons per year. It has currently been producing just slightly less than 90,000 tons per year. So the startup really is, as the money has gone in, and as the CIO has pointed out, 80 million has already gone in. 50 million is expected to go in this week. And on conclusion of this important meeting and of all the conditions precedent, the other money that he has alluded to will go in, and the production development plan will proceed at pace. So that is the state of affairs at Mopani. Thank you.
The question regarding the why is this royalty agreement with Glencore starting in 2027?
Thank you for that reminder. Again, just like the assumption that the price will be 12,000, at about 2027, it is assumed that the company will have reached that production level at which it is now profitable and able to pay a dividend. For example, I've just told you that the current production at this point is about 90,000 tons. At such a level, a profit and therefore a dividend is not possible. So by 2027, the production should be at about the steady state I've mentioned, at which the mine becomes profitable. So at about 200,000 tons. So it is assumed that at that point, Mopani will then be able to start paying dividends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions in-house? Okay, there's a hand in front here.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to clarify and ask, in terms of the royalty, what's...
Your names again, sir?
Oh, okay. Vikwato Kamanga. Yes, so in terms of the royalty, what is the calculation based on? Is this based on the profits, or is it simply based on the revenue after based on the price?
Next question.
I'll take that. So a royalty is a charge based on the top line. It's based on the production. Thank you.
Any more questions from the House? Shareholders present in the House? As we're thinking, we have one more question from those joining us virtually from Nesilele Chai Katisha. The question is, what are the key terms of the offtake agreement between Mopani and IRH, that is duration and price. CEO?
Thank you very much. This offtake is a commercially sustainable offtake. In other words, it is an offtake which would be obtained with any other independent offtaker. It is based on the production at the prevailing prices with the usual commercial adjustments. So there are adjustments for things like insurance, transportation, wharfage, loading, offloading, payment, prepayment, and so on. So it is a commercially comparable agreement that will obtain between MCM and the off-taker, in this case the shareholder, Delta. Thank you.
Another question from Jan Strat. After the transaction is completed, will the CCM inform shareholders on a quarterly basis on production progress and financial results of Mopani?
Thank you. On behalf of the CEO, you will, as shareholders, you will recall that as a listed entity, we have reporting guidelines that are provided for in the listing rules as well as in the Companies Act. So regarding the updates, yes, there will be market updates within the provisions of the listing rules, but also at the time when the annual results are being issued to the shareholders, details of each of the companies that is within the portfolio will be provided.
Thank you. Are there any questions for those of you who are joining us virtually to ask live? If you would want to ask a question, please raise your hand. While also waiting for that, any more questions in-house? Okay, we have one gentleman. We can get the last set of questions for this meeting.
My name is Solomesi, shareholder. I think this question.
Please tell us your full name.
Mbumoye Solomesi, shareholder.
Okay, thank you.
This question is directed towards mainframe government. So, Director Nyirenda, does this agreement or the design based on recourse or non-recourse, looking at the risk charter that the government has put in place, which we don't know, is it based on a recourse basis or non-recourse basis? Thank you. Recourse, I mean in-house, risk charter, non-recourse, others. Thank you.
Director Nyirenda.
I'm not very sure of what he's trying to get. CIO?
Thank you, Director. Yeah, I think we are also trying to process the question, but I think in terms of the transaction, just to make mention that it's done between two commercial entities, that is Zccm, in as much as it is majority owned by government-linked institutions. It operates independently. It is a listed entity and also governed by its own charter, and the responsibility is from the board. So there's no linkage between government. Of course, we are here to support the aspirations of government in terms of ensuring that there's improved production in copper price by doing such transaction. However, this was done purely on commercial basis by two commercial entities. Thank you.
Maybe I can say something on that. By recourse, I assume that in case of default, then there could be recourse to somebody else. So in this case, the providers of funding, IRH, once the shares have been issued to them, they will be the majority shareholder in the entity. So anything they're going to put in there will be at their own risk. There won't be anything of recourse either to Zccm Ih Egm or government. I assume that's what the question was about. So it's non-recourse.
Thank you. I can see that virtually there's no hand lifted and there are no more questions being asked in-house. There have been no further questions. I'd like to hand over to the Company Secretary for the furtherance of the meeting.
Thank you very much. The resolutions relating to the approval of the shareholders of Zccm Ih Egm for the transaction regarding the $1.1 billion investment by RH through its wholly owned subsidiary, Delta, for a 51% interest in Mopani Copper Mines are as follows. That the transaction be and is hereby approved, and that A, the directors of the company, the directors, be and are hereby authorized to do and procure to be done all such acts and things as they consider necessary, expedient, or appropriate in connection with the transaction, and to give effect to or implement the transaction, and this resolution, including for the purpose of obtaining an approval, consent, clearance, or permission that is a condition to the transaction, or that the directors consider necessary or expedient. B, the directors be and are hereby authorized to agree such modifications, variations, revisions, waivers, or amendments to the terms and conditions of the transaction, provided that such modifications, variations, revisions, waivers, or amendments are not of a material nature to any documents and arrangements relating thereto, as the directors may, in their absolute discretion, think fit. And C, any and all conduct of each of the directors that amounts to a breach of the articles resulting from, arising out of, or in relation to causing Zccm Ih Egm to enter into the transaction and transaction agreements be and is hereby ratified and confirmed, and Zccm Ih Egm hereby unconditionally and irrevocably waives, releases, and discharges any and all claims or rights of action that it may have against each of the directors resulting from, arising out of, or in relation to the same. I now request Mrs. Leah Mtonga Ngoma to propose the resolution.
Chair, I think due to a technical challenge, Ms. Leah Ngoma has sent a message on via the Zoom virtual meeting saying, I propose the 3 resolutions.
I invite Mr. Rodney Machila to second the resolution.
Thank you, Chair. I second the proposed 3 resolutions.
Thank you. I now put the resolutions to the meeting and open the voting for 10 minutes. Kindly proceed to vote. COPSEV will provide guidance on this.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, dear shareholders. Just to give you some quick housekeeping issues around the voting process. So let me start with those that have joined virtually. As you logged in onto the platform, you would notice to your extreme right, you would find 3 resolutions that are listed there. Kindly ensure that you scroll to the very end because I think as you log in, you probably see 2, but you just need to scroll down so that you can access the entire 3 resolutions that are listed. So once you see them, go right ahead and click the desired options. So there are 3 options there: for, abstain, and against. Go ahead and repeat the process for the entire 3 resolutions. And once you have done that, your vote will be carried, and later on the chairman will have the opportunity to announce the results. Then for those that are here physically, you will be receiving a tablet to aid you with the voting process. If you have already not done that, feel free to see the COPSEV team. They are in the aisle, happy to assist you with that voting process. But throughout this voting period, for those that have logged in virtually, if you've got challenges, kindly use the chat so that we can assist you. And those who are here, you can raise your hand so that we can quickly assist you. I thank you.
Dear shareholders, the results are now in. On resolution number 1, the shares for is 150,451,231 for, and against 103. That's virtually 100%. On the second resolution, those for is 150,451,264. Those against is 30. On the third resolution, the shares for is 150,449,576, and those against is 1,758. So all the resolutions, the 3 resolutions, have been passed. So there being no other business for this meeting, I thank members for their contribution and the directors and management for their attendance. I declare the extraordinary general meeting of the company closed, and thank you all for coming.